Hello, my name is John Thomas, otherwise known as the Mad Hedge Fund Trader. Istanbul was once the capital of the eastern portion of the Roman Empire. Then it was the capital of Ottoman Empire for 400 years. During my lifetime, I have seen the population here grow from 2 million to an incredible 20 million. It seems like the city now goes on forever. There are a lot of fascinating things to see here, so let's get started. I am writing this to you from the veranda of the presidential suite at the Çırağan Palace Hotel in Istanbul. From the former palace of an Ottoman prince, the commerce of the Straits of Bosporus plays out before me. Empty supertankers lumber up the narrow waterway to pick up another load of Russian crude at Baku, followed by full container ships loaded with consumer goods to pay for it all. Peripatetic ferries rapidly crisscross its course, laden with passengers fleeing Istanbul's traffic nightmare. Amid the mix are dozens of racing yachts, the chief status of Turkey's new elite. It's amazing you don't read more about Turkish maritime disasters. The first thing you learn about Turkey these days is that it is no longer an emerging economy. It has emerged. It now ranks 17th in the world in GDP and could be 10th in another decade. Per capita income has soared to $11,000, compared to $48,000 in the US and only $6,000 in China. Once overly dependent on Europe for trade, Turkey has ramped up its shipment of goods to much of the emerging world. A runaway property boom has placed it fourth in the world in the number of billionaires, with a total of 28. It is the fourth largest shipbuilder, a major auto manufacturer, and boasts an important defense industry. If you are eating cherries, hazelnuts, olives, or figs in Europe, chances are they came from a farm in Turkey. Turkey joined the European Customs Union in 1996. It is now negotiating for full European Community membership, becoming the first Asian member to do so, an event expected to occur in the next 5 to 10 years. I have taken great pleasure in recent years returning to old haunts I first saw 46 years ago. That's when I lived on $1 a day, carried my worldly possessions in a Kelty backpack, and slept under bridges, in bombed-out farmhouses, or at the local youth hostel. I remember the Istanbuls had a thriving population of bedbugs and a permanently blocked sewer line. However, this time around I'm staying at 5-star hotels, like the Kempinski in Istanbul, and the first decision of the day is whether or not to have French champagne with my fresh squeezed orange juice. Buy when there is blood in the streets. That is the time-honored tradition of traders and investors everywhere when it comes to emerging markets. I had a friend who reliably bought every coup d'etat in Thailand during the 70s and 80s, and he made a fortune, retiring to one of the country's idyllic islands off the coast of Phuket. In fact, I think he bought the whole island. Blood is certainly flowing in Turkey these days. You have the real kind flowing in Istanbul's Gezi Park, the country's own Democracy Square, where students and labor leaders have been protesting the conservative, mildly Islamic policies of Prime Minister Erdogan. The violence led to 3,000 arrests and 11 dead. Of course, no visit to Istanbul would be complete without a stop at the Hagia Sophia, one of the oldest buildings in the world. In 324 AD, Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor, ordered his capital moved to the east to flee repeated attacks by barbarians from the north. That was when the name of the city was changed from Byzantium to Constantinople. Its construction was ordered in 532 AD by Justinian, one of the last Roman emperors. Designed by a group of brilliant Greek mathematicians, it is today still considered one of the wonders of the world. There it remained as the seat of the Eastern Orthodox Church for nearly 1,000 years. In fact, it was the largest cathedral in existence until the one in Seville was constructed by the Spanish kings in 1520. After it was invaded by the Ottoman Turks in 1453, it became an imperial mosque. That is when 4 soaring minarets were added, and the original ancient depictions of Jesus were plastered over. In the wake of Turkey's defeat in World War I, a new Republic of Turkey was created, with a young army officer named Ataturk as its first president. The secular, modernizing government sought to cut all links to religion. The city's name was changed from Constantinople to Istanbul in 1930. In 1935, the Hagia Sophia was converted to a national museum and has remained open ever since to the devout and tourists alike. Hagia Sophia's massive dome is considered the high point of Byzantine architecture, leaving you in awe as you walk under its spectacular pendant chandeliers. Strolling the stone floors polished by the feet of visitors over 1,500 years, light filters in from every direction, giving it a mystical quality. Don't forget to touch the permanently damp wishing column, which is said to cure many diseases. Even though it is now a state museum, a visit here is truly a religious experience. And if anyone ever asked you if you have ever been to Byzantium, Constantinople, or Istanbul, you can rightly say that you've been to all 3. No trip to Istanbul would be complete without a visit to the Grand Bazaar, the first ever shopping mall. There, merchants have been offering a vast array of treasures for sale for the past 600 years. The Grand Bazaar is one of the oldest covered markets in the world, with 61 streets and an unbelievable 3,000 shops. It has been destroyed many times by earthquakes and fires over the years, but each time it gets rebuilt. Apparently, business there is great. As soon as the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, construction of the new bazaar began. Since the empire then spread across the continents of Europe, Asia, and Africa, the bazaar became the world's largest exchange for traded goods. Long caravans of camels unloaded precious silks and spices at the gates of the bazaar from the Orient to be traded for the gold and silver of Europe. Eventually, commerce here entered a long-term decline when the Europeans opened their own trade routes to Asia, and the Industrial Revolution introduced cutthroat competition through mass production. It wasn't long before you could buy a cheaper carpet in Belgium than in the bazaar. Today, Turkish and Persian carpets are still the big-ticket items for sale. You can pay anywhere from $20 for a little roll-up souvenir to stuff in your suitcase to upwards of $50,000 for a rare tribal carpet with beautiful geometric designs in all natural dyes. Some 100,000 people still work in the carpet industry in Turkey. It takes a woman 4 years to hand tie enough knots to produce a single genuine Turkish carpet. Of course, you never pay the first price asked. Haggling and negotiation are an art form here, and the locals have had 6 centuries of practice. My experience is that you don't find out the real price for an item until you have walked at least 20 feet away. Be careful though, most of the goods for sale in the bazaar are cheap imports made in China, and tourists have made the place so popular they have driven prices sky high. You can usually get a better deal outside the bazaar once you know what you really want. Wow, I really love that design of that Persian silk carpet over there. I'll catch you later. The magnificent Topkapi Palace was the primary residence of the Ottoman sultans for 400 years. Boasting some 400 rooms, the palace was a city within a city. It is absolutely massive, and you could not see it all even if you visited every day for a month. In its heyday, It was one of the most spectacular palaces in Europe. When foreign potentates had to pay tribute to the Sultan, this is where they came. Many of the tens of thousands of ornate tiles that adorn the walls of the Sultan's private quarters were created in China and made the year-long trip on the legendary Silk Road. The palace has been a national museum since 1924 and is a World UNESCO Heritage Site. It houses some of the most important relics of the religion of Islam, including the sword and cloak of Muhammad and his footprints. By the way, the Prophet had pretty big feet. It also hosts the staff of Moses, the one that turned the Pharaoh's Nile into blood 5,000 years ago. The palace occupies a strategic bluff over the Straits of Bosphorus and enjoys a steady, cooling breeze. At its peak, the massive compound housed 4,000 people, including an extensive harem for the Sultan, overseen by an army of eunuchs. The site is littered with the architectural debris that dates back to before the Roman Empire. The complex houses several museums that display some of Turkey's most valuable national treasures. These include those for jewels, medals presented to the Sultan by foreign governments, Islamic calligraphy, and Chinese porcelain. My favorite is an armory from the Middle Ages. The weapons were either manufactured by the Ottomans themselves or captured in foreign battles. Some of the Sultan's armor is exquisitely inlaid with gold filigree. I definitely would not want to be sliced by one of those razor-sharp scimitars, nor get bonked on the head with a nail-studded mace, no matter how beautiful they may be. Today the site is still guarded by the Turkish army. The Sultan Ahmed Mosque, popularly known as the Blue Mosque, is one of the most important places of worship in the Muslim world. So named for the 20,000 interior blue ceramic tiles, it is also an amazing work of art. Sultan Ahmed ordered the mosque built to atone for his loss in a war against the Habsburg monarchy of Austria. Instead of paying for it with the spoils of war, as was the tradition at the time, the Sultan paid for its construction out of his own pocket. It was finished in 1616. The mosque consists of a main dome, which architecturally heavily borrows from the nearby Hagia Sophia, and 6 enormous minarets. More than 200 stained glass windows give the interior lighting a subtle and subdued quality. One is almost blinded by the intricate Islamic designs of flowers and geometrical patterns. Portrayal of the human form is strictly forbidden under Islamic law. Imposing but florid black Arab script adorns every wall, quoting passages from the Quran, the holy Islamic text. When the Blue Mosque was finished, the Sultan was criticized for being presumptuous, as it had the same number of minarets as the mosque in Mecca, the holiest of Islamic shrines. He solved this problem by immediately building a 7th minaret at the Mecca Mosque. Today, visitors from all over the world are welcome to explore the Blue Mosque, whether they practice the religion or not. But men must wear long trousers, women cover their heads with scarves, and all must remove their shoes. Feet washing stations conveniently line the exterior of the building. To make compliance with these rules easy, the administrators make wraparound skirts available for the men, scarves for the women, and plastic bags with which to carry your shoes. With feet my size, I needed 2. Seeking to escape the hustle and bustle of Istanbul, I decided to travel to the ancient city of Bodrum on Turkey's South Aegean coast. The dominant feature here is Bodrum Castle, built in the 15th century by the crusading Knights Hospitaliers who sought to throw the infidels out of the Holy Land. Because they later gave up without a fight, the castle remains fairly close to its original condition. The castle contains a museum of archaeology with a fine collection of amphoras, used to store wine and olive oil, the major commodities that dominated international trade in the Eastern Mediterranean 2,000 years ago. People have been living here for 9,000 years, including Carians, Greeks, Persians, Romans, European Crusaders, Ottomans, and finally the Turks. It was captured by Alexander the Great after a fierce battle and was the hometown of the famous Greek historian Herodotus. One of its most notable sites is a perfectly preserved amphitheater right on the outskirts of town, the theater of Halicarnassus. It was built by the Greek king Mausolus in the 4th century BC and later was expanded by the Romans. On a good day, the venue could seat 10,000 to watch Greek tragedies, gladiators in mortal combat, or helpless Christians eaten by wild animals. It has recently been restored and still hosts events today. Agriculture here has always been poor, and olive trees, that toughest of plants, is about the only thing you see in abundance. No surprise then that you find olives in almost everything you eat. That drove the natives to the sea to earn their living, first as fishermen, then as commercial sponge divers. When I first came here in the 1960s, that's what they were still doing, and most of the coast was deserted. Then the tourism industry exploded as weary Europeans sought cheap accommodation and reliable summer sunshine for their vacations. Today, Bodrum is a favorite cruising stop of yachts of every description, from coastal Turkish gullets to the mega yachts of Russian oligarchs. The well-to-do now pay millions for beachfront homes with sandy beaches and spectacular turquoise Aegean views. The town is notorious for its all-night parties. In fact, I noticed many young couples dressed to the nines heading out for a night of adventure just as I was turning in for an evening to catch a film on Netflix. Who said old age wasn't fun? One of the most remarkable engineering feats in history was the construction of the Constantinople cisterns. Ordered built by the Emperor Justinian in 532 AD, it was designed by a group of brilliant Greek mathematicians. It took 7,000 slaves a decade to complete. Hundreds died. The end result was a water storage facility that was 453 feet long and 212 feet wide, enough to store 2.8 million cubic feet of water. The cisterns were thought to be a major reason why the city of Constantinople was able to withstand sieges by invaders for nearly 1,000 years. As long as you had enough water to drink, you could last indefinitely. In the end, it was one of the first uses of cannon and gunpowder that caused the city to fall in 1432. Today, the cistern is almost completely empty to allow room for tourists to wander its darkened chambers. Laughing and giddy visitors from around the world stroll the cistern in small groups, tossing in thousands of coins into the shallow waters. The ceiling is supported by an incredible forest of 336 huge marble and granite columns, each one 30 feet high. These have been recycled from numerous Greek and other temples looted from around the empire. There is no telling where they came from. As a result, you see symbology from many long-lost civilizations that leave historians scratching their heads as to their origin. The most puzzling are two gigantic Medusa heads supporting columns in a far corner of the cistern, one upside down and the other on its side. It is thought they were placed this way to prevent the Medusa's gaze from turning onlookers into stone. Originally, tourists toured the chamber by boat. They have been able to stroll around by foot since the last major restoration in 1987. Look closely and you will remember seeing the cistern in several movies and books, including James Bond's From Russia with Love and Dan Brown's Inferno. Well, that about wraps it up for now. I hope you enjoyed exploring the highlights of one of the most interesting cities in the world with me, Istanbul, Turkey. Please join me on my next adventure, wherever that may be. Also, come visit me at my website at www.madhedgefundtrader.com to learn more about trading, making money, and the world at large. This is John Thomas, the Mad Hedge Fund Trader, signing off for today. Good luck and good trading.